Hello again, I am Blunty here once more in a desperate attempt to inject a little bit of intelligence, a little bit of thoughtfulness, a little bit of perspective into an area of discussion that is more often than not lacking any kind of intelligence and thoughtfulness and, even thinking before you start typing or saying words and things like that. And it is gaming discussion, fanboy arguments, if you will, which are the very antithesis of intelligent discussion. Here's intelligent discussion, and here's gaming fanboys, and that's kind of like the antimatter versus matter, and when you try and put the two close to each other, they generally mutually annihilate each other. But I will try to make an attempt to inject a little bit of perspective and thoughtfulness into this argument nonetheless, and that current argument going around the gaming circles at the moment is, of course, the Call of Duty Ghosts controversy, and that is Call of Duty Ghosts on next-gen consoles. On the Xbox One, it is rendered at 720p. On the PlayStation 4, it is rendered natively at 1080p. The Xbox One will upscale 720p to 1080p, and if you listen to the suits from Microsoft trying to put a spin on this so it doesn't damage their sales too much for this multi-platform giant of a game, they're saying, well, we're upscaling from 720p anyway, so what you get on your TV is actually 1080p, it's just upscaled from 720p, and it looks like 1080p on your 1080p screen because it's spat out 1080p. The machine generates a 1080p signal and it goes to your TV, and your TV will say up in the little corner, 1080p. Well, that's kind of bullshit, really, to anyone who knows actually what they're talking about, because 720p is 720p. It doesn't matter if you upscale it to 1080p, it's still rendered at 720p, and that does make a significant difference in how the game looks. It's going to look more jaggy at 720p than it does at 1080p. That's just the nature of how many pixels are being drawn. There is no other way to put it than that. The game is going to look better on the PlayStation 4, and that's that. But the problem we're hitting at the moment is gamers are using that as an excuse to say, well, the PlayStation 4 is obviously a far superior bit of hardware. Every game in existence will always look better on the PlayStation 4, so that is obviously the only smart choice to make if you're buying a console. And that's just bullshit. That's stupid. Because the only thing that this situation tells you is Infinity Ward, the third-party people who are making this game, who have, they're not Sony and they're not Microsoft, they're Infinity Ward. Published through Activision, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Released in Australia, it's Activision. Might be different publishers somewhere else in the world. I know that happens sometimes. I don't think it is. Anyway, doesn't really matter. Infinity Ward, the people who make this game. The only thing that this situation tells us is Infinity Ward were unable to get 1080p out of the Xbox One on day one. And the PlayStation 4 they were. Does this mean they had smarter coders working on the PlayStation 4 version? Maybe. Does this mean the drivers and software and underlying firmware on the PlayStation 4 was more conducive to squeezing out 1080p than where the Xbox One sat? Because these are moving targets. The hardware's been set in stone for a little while, but the software running these things, the drivers and the firmware and the operating systems and all that sort of stuff, they're constantly moving targets as we head to launch. Things change, and that can cause challenges for people who are developing software for launch. Is that the case here? I don't know. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's gone on record and saying, this is exactly why it runs at 720p here and 1080p here. It might be because the drivers for the graphics chipset have a problem. Well, not a problem, but something lacking. Maybe they're not polished up enough now. Because PC users will tell you that something as simple as, a 30 meg video driver can make a massive difference in the performance of a video card. That could be the only problem sitting here, because they have to get it ready for launch, so it has to be a cut-off point. They can't keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the video driver update to come, if that's the problem at all. They just have to wall it off and go, okay, this is the best we can do at launch. Does this mean inherently that the PlayStation 4 is better? Is this a failure of the Xbox One? No, it's not necessarily. It's a failure of Infinity Ward to get their code ready on both machines, because both machines are very, very close to each other. Yes, the PlayStation 4, on paper, is the most powerful of the two of them. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best, most fun thing to play on. Because if you look back, PlayStation 2 versus Xbox, the original Xbox, the first Xbox One, if you will, the Xbox was significantly more powerful than the PlayStation 2. But I don't think you'll find many people out there who will say, well, the winner of that generation was the Xbox because it was more powerful. If it wasn't for Halo, that thing might not have sold anything at all. Really, that Halo was the system seller. Halo was the thing that gave that thing the kick. It was about a fun game, not about the hardware. The PlayStation 2 sold colossally more, both in hardware and accessories and games. In the world out there, there was way more of those. And it was the inferior bit of hardware. Why did it win? Because if hardware is the only thing that matters, why did the PlayStation 2, quote-unquote, win that generation, depending on, how you want to define winning? It's a ridiculous concept to win a console generation anyway, because all that matters is, do you own this thing? Are you having fun with it? Yes, winner, as far as I'm concerned. But the point is, hardware is not the entire story. It never, ever has been in any console generation. At all. Never. And it's not about to become the deciding factor. It just isn't. So those of you out there claiming this one example at launch of a brand new console generation is clear and present evidence of the PlayStation 4's obvious superiority are idiots. There is no other word for it. Well, maybe retarded is another word for it. But you know what I'm saying. It's silly. It's pure silliness to suggest that this one example is to be used as a weapon to claim victory before the things have even hit shelves. All I can tell you is day one launches, day one games, launch window games, are never, ever, ever, ever representative of what the console is actually capable of during its lifestyle as the coders and the software and the firmware and all that sort of stuff evolves over time and people get better at coding for it and they find the little tricks and loopholes that work really well. And I mean, look for yourselves. You can find it on YouTube. YouTube's been around long enough for you to actually look at this stuff now. Look at the gameplay from day one games on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 and compare them to the games that came out this year. It's wildly different, okay? Day one games do not represent the power of the console. They try, most often not, to throw in a few games that are basically expensive tech demos to show off particular things about the hardware that they can do now that they couldn't do before. But that's not representative of the complete story. Never has been, never will be. And anybody who uses the day one software experience to claim a clear victory for one piece of hardware or the other is a complete fool who has no comprehension of video gaming history or the legacy sitting behind us. They've just woken up one day and go, oh, I'm brand new to the planet Earth. Look, Call of Duty looks better on the PlayStation 4. Must be better in everything it does. Woo! Let the gamers with brains have the discussions on issues that may affect, actual real-world things, like how fun a game is to play, which is the only real issue we should ever worry about. How much fun is this game to play? Lots of fun? I'll buy it! Anyway, thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and we'll catch you next time. Gamers, please, stop being such dicks to each other. We all enjoy the same hobby. Just be cool. Please.